Fred, Heather has not been heard of since 1986. The children are saying that it was a family joke, that she was underneath the patio. You're laughing.
Just supposing you did. I mean, you're not going to sit there and say, your sister's under the patio. I think we'd better pack it away. We're talking rubbish, aren't we?
Can't, can we?
I mean, you're
I'll
digging
pack
me
it up.
place up,
Yeah,
so
right.
carry on doing it. I mean,
That's
why
right.
bother?
That's right. And obviously, if there's anybody under there, Fred, we will find them.
Fred and Rosemary West appeared to be an ordinary couple, raising their family in a quiet English neighborhood. But behind the unassuming facade of 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester lurked an unimaginable horror. This wasn't just a home, it was a house of unspeakable secrets, torture, and death. Between 1967 and 1987, Fred and Rose West committed a series of chilling murders, hidden from sight beneath their own floorboards and backyard. Their victims ranged from strangers to their own children, a macabre tale of betrayal, sadism, and depravity. What turned these seemingly normal individuals into two of Britain's most infamous serial killers? This is the dark journey into the lives and minds of Fred and Rose West. Welcome to Crime Labs. Every crime has a story. Some are solved, some vanish forever. But what is the truth? Now let's shed light on what's been lost in the dark. Fred West was born on September 29, 1941, in Herefordshire, England, into a deeply troubled family. Poverty and abuse dominated his early years. Fred claimed his childhood home was rife with violence and incestuous abuse. His father, Walter West, reportedly taught him to abuse animals, embedding sadistic tendencies early on. Fred's mother, Daisy, allegedly sexually abused him starting when he was just 12 years old. Such traumas created a foundation of violence and distorted morality. Fred dropped out of school at 15, taking odd farm jobs, and at 17, a severe motorcycle accident left him with permanent brain injuries. Friends and family noted a dramatic shift in his personality. Aggression and volatility became his trademarks. Soon after, Fred committed his first known sexual offense at age 20, when he assaulted a 13-year-old girl. Although convicted, he avoided jail, further emboldening his sense of invincibility. In 1962, Fred married Catherine Rena Costello, who was already pregnant by another man. The marriage was troubled, characterized by violence and infidelity. Fred's sadistic tendencies soon surfaced, and by 1967 he had committed his first murder, killing Anne McFall, a pregnant young woman caring for his children. Anne's remains would remain undiscovered for nearly 3 decades. Rosemary Letts was born on November 29, 1953, in Devon, England. Rose's early life was no less harrowing. Her father, Bill Letts, was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, prone to violent outbursts, regularly abusing his wife and children. Rose was subjected to constant physical and sexual abuse from her father, leaving deep emotional scars and distorted ideas about sexuality and affection. As Rose entered adolescence, her behavior became increasingly provocative and troubling. She openly exhibited inappropriate sexual behaviors, rebelling against the oppressive control of her father. By age 15, Rose was already attracting the attention of much older men, desperate for affection and validation. In 1968, fate took a tragic turn when Fred West, then 27, met 15-year-old Rose Letts at a bus stop. Fred was instantly captivated, showering the vulnerable young girl with attention and affection she so desperately craved. Rose quickly became emotionally dependent on Fred, viewing him as a savior from her abusive home life. Despite vehement objections from her family, Rose moved in with Fred shortly after her 16th birthday, forever sealing their twisted destinies.
When you were about 30, whatever it was, you meet Rose, is that right?
She was working in the cake shop in the middle of Cheltenham.
And she's how old then?
Be 15 and a half. I knew Rose for 3 or 4 months, and then I took her out on her 16th birthday. We had a good night. A month later, she was pregnant. So a month over her 16th birthday, she was in a family wedding.
Fred and Rose's union rapidly descended into darkness. Initially, their relationship might have appeared like salvation to Rose, but it quickly evolved into a terrifying partnership bound by violence and sadism. Rose became pregnant soon after moving in with Fred, giving birth to their daughter Heather in October 1970. By this time, Fred had already established himself as deeply unstable, having spent time in prison for theft. During Fred's incarceration, Rose was left alone with his two daughters from his previous marriage, 8-year-old Charmaine and younger sister Anna Marie. Isolated and overwhelmed, Rose unleashed her cruelty, particularly upon Charmaine. Witnesses later reported seeing Rose severely beating and restraining Charmaine. This cruelty culminated in tragedy. In the summer of 1971, shortly before Fred's release from prison, Rose murdered Charmaine. Fred returned home not only accepting Rose's actions but actively helping conceal the crime. Charmaine's body was buried under the kitchen floor, hidden from the world by concrete, a grim precursor of horrors yet to come. Their marriage in 1972 marked a new chapter of escalating depravity. Moving into 25 Cromwell Street, Fred and Rose transformed their home into a den of sadism. The house became notorious not just for its sinister activities but also as a place where Rose openly engaged in prostitution, with Fred's enthusiastic approval and involvement. The West's first victims after Charmaine were vulnerable young women lured into their home with promises of shelter, friendship, or employment. Together, they tortured and sexually assaulted these victims before murdering them. The cellar of their home turned into a graveyard of buried secrets, each victim cruelly discarded beneath the floorboards or in the backyard garden. At 25 Cromwell Street, Fred and Rose West constructed not just a home, but a twisted empire of horror. Between 1972 and 1987, their modest house in Gloucester became the gruesome site of numerous brutal murders. Their victims were often transient youths, vulnerable teenagers, or young women seeking refuge or friendship. Fred and Rose preyed on their weaknesses, offering kindness and shelter, only to betray them horrifically. Each victim endured unimaginable cruelty. Bound, tortured, and subjected to sexual violence, their final moments were filled with fear and pain. Linda Goff, the first victim discovered, vanished in April 1973 after moving into the West home. Her remains were later unearthed in the cellar. Following Linda, 15-year-old Carol and Cooper disappeared in November 1973 after attending a cinema in Worcester. Her body was similarly found beneath the home. Lucy Partington, a promising university student, disappeared in December 1973, becoming yet another victim buried in the cellar. Many of these young women were reported missing, yet investigations yielded no results at the time. Over the years, the West home accumulated horrifying secrets. Bodies continued to be buried beneath the cellar floor or hidden in the garden. Each killing seemed to embolden Fred and Rose further, cementing their twisted bond. Even their own daughter, Heather West, was not spared. In 1987, after threatening to expose the abuse within her family, Heather was murdered by Fred and Rose. Her remains were concealed beneath the patio in their backyard, marking the tragic peak of the West's depravity. Neighbors and friends remained oblivious. Fred and Rose maintained a facade of normalcy, raising children and hosting visitors just inches above their gruesome secrets. For nearly 2 decades, the horrors of 25 Cromwell Street remained undiscovered, a silent testament to the chilling ease with which evil can hide in plain sight. Fred and Rose West's downfall began largely by chance, driven by the determination of a vigilant detective named Hazel Savage. In 1992, Savage, working in Gloucester, received troubling reports from social workers. Children from the West family had been overheard making eerie jokes about their sister, Heather, being buried in the backyard. Taking these disturbing comments seriously, Savage investigated further and discovered alarming signs in the family's history. Allegations of child abuse, rumors about Rose's involvement in prostitution, and Fred's extensive criminal past. Heather's mysterious disappearance in 1987 and the family's inconsistent explanations deepened Savage's suspicions. Yet, without concrete evidence, the initial investigation stalled. However, Savage persistently pressed her superiors for further action. In 1992, Fred and Rose had already faced accusations of sexually abusing their eldest daughter, Anna Marie, and other children. Anna Marie initially described horrifying abuses by her parents but tragically withdrew her statements under pressure, leading to the dismissal of the charges. Nonetheless, the buried in the backyard joke resurfaced again in early 1994, prompting authorities not to ignore the warning this time. On Savage's insistence, Gloucester police reopened Heather West's missing person investigation. By February 1994, sufficient suspicion existed to obtain a search warrant for 25 Cromwell Street. On February 24, 1994, detectives arrived at the home to excavate the garden. Rose was present at the residence while Fred had gone to work. As the police began digging, Fred voluntarily visited the police station to provide a statement regarding his daughter's disappearance. Initially composed, Fred claimed he had recently seen Heather in Birmingham. However, the following day, February 25, 1994, investigators uncovered human remains in the garden, a femur bone belonging to a young girl.
We've undertaken the inquiries into her disappearance, and because of the inquiries that we've made, that we're at this stage that we are today.
What has been found so far?
We have found some bones.
Fred West immediately changed his story, confessing to police that he had buried Heather's body beneath the patio.
I never intended to hurt Heather at all. All I wanted to do was persuade Heather to stay at home, and if she wouldn't, let her go. By this time, I had no control over my thoughts at all. There was a piece of electric flex. I believe it was 13 amp. And I picked it up, and I thought, well, I better make sure that she is dead. So I tied it around her neck. So I then went back to the cupboard to try and find something to cut her up with.
Tell the officers then, Fred, what item did you use to complete the exercise of dismembering Heather?
The bread knife.
Fred was arrested that day for the murder of his 16-year-old daughter. Rose West was also taken into custody shortly after, under suspicion of complicity in Heather's murder. The excavation of the home and garden proceeded meticulously, akin to an archaeological dig. Police employed ground-penetrating radar and painstakingly examined the backyard and cellar inch by inch. Heather's remains were the first discovered, transforming the sinister family joke into grim reality. As the excavation continued, investigators unearthed numerous additional human bones, each discovery forcing the dismantling of further sections of the house.
Right, Fred. What I want you to do is, can you show me, first of all, where you buried Shirley's friend?
Right where that down.
Just right in the middle of this, between the two walls. Just think of that and talk to us.
It's not there.
Which one, Fred? Which one, Fred? The one, this one here. The one right in the corner. Yeah.
Whilst we're here, Fred, is there anything else that you want to look at? You don't want to keep coming back here with you?
No.
You sure?
Yes. Take it all.
By March 1994, remains belonging to 9 distinct victims were uncovered at 25 Cromwell Street. These included Heather and 8 other missing young women. Detectives nationwide began cross-referencing these discoveries with missing person reports, collecting DNA samples from grieving families and examining old photographs. In May 1994, additional searches at the West's former home on Midland Road revealed the remains of Charmaine West, Fred's stepdaughter. Subsequently, searches near Fred's childhood village of Muchmarkel uncovered the remains of Rena Costello and Anne McFall. In total, the police officially identified 12 victims. Fred West confessed verbally to 11 murders in a brief note, notably denying only the murder of Anne McFall despite having directed police to her burial site. Throughout the investigation, Rose West exercised her right to silence, refusing cooperation and offering no explanations or confessions. Reportedly, Rose distanced herself from Fred, even telling officers she barely knew him, in a bid to place all blame solely on her husband.
Poirot's house
Forensic findings from the site were deeply disturbing. Experts determined that most victims endured severe torture, bound and gagged before death. At trial, Professor Bernard Knight testified to finding makeshift gags and restraints, tape, cloth, belts, on 7 of the 9 victims at Cromwell Street. Shirley Hubbard's head was entirely wrapped in packing tape with a breathing tube inserted. Alison Chambers had a leather strap around her skull. Therese Siegenthaler had a knotted cloth gag. Lucy Partington and Juanita Mott had ropes and plastic bindings. Linda Goff and Carol Ann Cooper also showed signs of similar restraint. Only Heather, Shirley Robinson, and Charmaine were likely killed swiftly without extensive restraint. Moreover, most victims were decapitated and dismembered, presumably to facilitate burial in confined spaces. Various bones, particularly kneecaps and fingers, were notably absent, suggesting the Wests may have kept these as macabre souvenirs. Additionally, investigators discovered personal belongings such as Lucy Partington's bag and Linda Goff's clothes within the house, solidifying the systematic and horrific nature of the West's crimes. The investigation also exposed significant failings from prior police actions. Particularly, the Caroline Owens incident in the early 1970s highlighted severe systemic oversights. Owens, just 17 at the time, had escaped after enduring abduction, rape, and torture by Fred and Rose. Unfortunately, due to her psychological trauma and subsequent withdrawal of testimony, Fred and Rose were only fined £50 each for minor charges, allowing them to continue their murderous spree unchecked. Owens later testified during Rose's 1995 trial, lamenting how her earlier silence might have enabled further atrocities. The meticulous investigation of 1994 ensured that Fred and Rose West could evade justice no longer, finally bringing the horrifying truth behind 25 Cromwell Street to light. As the case attracted national attention, the public grappled with disbelief and horror. How had this seemingly normal couple managed to commit such atrocities without detection? Fred and Rose West's dark legacy was now fully exposed, shaking Britain to its core and changing Gloucester forever. As the chilling revelations from 25 Cromwell Street stunned Britain, the criminal justice system prepared for one of its most infamous trials. Fred West, initially cooperative, quickly spiraled into despair as the magnitude of his crimes weighed on him. In December 1994, he was formally charged with 12 counts of murder. Public outrage was intense, demanding swift and definitive justice. But on January 1, 1995, before facing the jury, Fred West evaded ultimate accountability by hanging himself in his cell at Winson Green Prison. His suicide note was a final love letter to his wife, and contained his last chilling request. Fred expressed a desire to be interred with their daughter, Heather, whom he and Rose had murdered, as well as his stepdaughter and first wife. Beneath his letter, Fred sketched a tombstone with the inscription, "In loving memory, Fred West, Rose West. Rest in peace where no shadow falls. In perfect peace he waits for Rose, his wife." All attention then shifted to Rosemary West. Her silence during interrogations intensified public and media scrutiny, amplifying the gravity of her impending trial. Rose was formally charged with 10 counts of murder, making her one of Britain's most notorious female serial killers to ever stand trial. October 1995 saw the trial begin at Winchester Crown Court, transforming it into a national spectacle. Prosecutor Brian Levison depicted Rose West as an active participant, equally culpable in the sadistic torture and murders of the victims. Survivors and former acquaintances painted vivid, chilling accounts of life inside the Cromwell Street house, including horrifying testimonies from surviving victim Caroline Owens and Fred's daughter, Anna Marie West, whose gut-wrenching accounts of abuse drew tears and shock from observers. Rose's defense portrayed her as yet another victim, manipulated by Fred's monstrous control. However, the mounting evidence told a far darker truth. Each piece of evidence, personal belongings of victims found at the house, forensic discoveries, and eyewitness testimonies, slowly unraveled her narrative, highlighting Rose as an instigator rather than a mere accomplice. After weeks of grueling testimonies and chilling forensic reports, the jury deliberated carefully. On November 22, 1995, Rose West was found guilty on all 10 counts of murder, sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Judge Justice Mantell described her crimes as appalling, depraved, and beyond human comprehension. Rose showed minimal reaction, maintaining the icy demeanor she had displayed throughout the trial. Sent to Durham Prison, she entered British history as one of its most reviled criminals, her name synonymous with pure evil. Understanding the motivations behind the horrors perpetrated by Fred and Rose West challenges even the most seasoned criminal psychologists. At the core of their crimes lies a deeply disturbing blend of psychopathy, narcissism, and sexual sadism, a catastrophic meeting of damaged minds. Fred West's psychological profile suggests severe antisocial personality disorder with marked narcissistic tendencies. His early exposure to familial sexual abuse, violent upbringing, and significant traumatic brain injuries created a volatile psychological foundation. Fred lacked empathy, guilt, and moral restraint, often describing his actions with chilling detachment. Experts noted his extraordinary ability to compartmentalize his heinous acts, maintaining an outwardly normal family life while committing horrific violence beneath his own roof. Rosemary West's psychological landscape was equally complex. Unlike typical cases involving female serial killers, Rose displayed active, aggressive sadism usually attributed predominantly to male perpetrators. Her childhood, rife with sexual abuse and extreme violence, crafted a personality that viewed cruelty as commonplace and manipulation as survival. Psychiatric evaluations indicated severe narcissism intertwined with psychopathy, reflected in her cold demeanor during interrogations and trials. Rose exhibited classic traits of a sadistic predator, asserting dominance, deriving pleasure from inflicting pain, and showing no remorse or empathy. The union of Fred and Rose represents a chilling phenomenon psychologists describe as folie à deux, or shared madness. Alone, they might have inflicted isolated violence, but together they formed a dangerous catalyst for escalating sadism. Fred provided validation and acceptance for Rose's darkest impulses, while Rose intensified Fred's violence, eliminating boundaries he might have otherwise respected. Their mutual reinforcement of sadistic fantasies became self-sustaining. Each murder solidified their twisted intimacy, isolating them further from normal human connections and deepening their depravity. Specialists point to this codependency as pivotal in escalating their crimes from isolated acts to a sustained campaign of torture and murder. Clinical analyses of the Wests underline a troubling reality. Extreme childhood trauma, left unchecked, can manifest into devastating outcomes. The Wests are not merely monstrous anomalies but represent a sobering reflection on the intersection of environmental influences and innate psychological vulnerabilities. Ultimately, the psychological dissection of Fred and Rose West's case provides chilling insights into the darkest corners of human nature. It warns society of the dire consequences of neglect, trauma, and unchecked cruelty. The West's crimes remain an enduring reminder of how easily humanity can be overshadowed by monstrosity. In prison, Rosemary West continues to be one of Britain's most infamous inmates. Currently housed at Newhall Prison, West has been moved several times due to concerns about her safety and her notorious reputation. Reports from prison authorities describe her life as one marked by strict isolation, as other inmates universally revile her for her crimes. Over the years, she has tried to maintain a low profile, reportedly adopting the new identity Jennifer Jones, in a futile attempt to distance herself from her monstrous legacy. Despite efforts to avoid attention, Rose remains a figure of enduring public fascination and disgust. Media outlets periodically feature her story, reinforcing her unwanted celebrity status behind bars. Her attempts at appeals have long ceased, recognizing that public and judicial sympathy is forever beyond reach. The West children, forced to carry the weight of their parents' horrific legacy, have struggled to reconstruct their lives. Anna Marie and Stephen West, in particular, have publicly shared their harrowing experiences, advocating for awareness about childhood abuse and trauma. Both have expressed the profound challenge of coping with their family's dark past, emphasizing the necessity for society to recognize and prevent similar abuses from occurring. The cultural legacy of Fred and Rose West extends beyond mere notoriety, influencing popular culture in profound ways. Their story has become a cautionary tale featured in numerous books, films, and documentaries, including Netflix's recent Fred and Rose West, a British horror story, bringing their gruesome narrative to new generations worldwide. Today, 25 Cromwell Street no longer exists, but the memories of its horrors cannot and should not fade away. Acknowledging these crimes serves not just to honor the memory of the victims, but also to remind society of its duty to protect the vulnerable. It pushes us collectively toward compassion, vigilance, and responsibility, ensuring that victims are not forgotten and that similar horrors are prevented. The truth always rises to the surface, but sometimes when you least expect it. If this story made you think, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. See you in the next case. Stay safe.